Hi, I'm Sade, and today we are talking about this book, His Only Wife by Peace Adzo Medie. There were so many things that resonated for me in this book. One of the key things is growing up until like age 13, I lived in a 2-bedroom flat in southeast London that we called Hotel L'Aquitaine, because if there was like it was like the way station between Lagos Airport and London Heathrow, and any Nigerian who's come into the UK would pass through our flat at some point, whether you just wanted some food and friendly faces, or you had to drop something off for somebody else to come and collect. So somebody's sending it from Nigeria, somebody in the UK needs it, come and collect it from our, like a post office. Whether you wanted to change money or you needed a place to stay for a few days or a few weeks or even a few months, our place was ground zero, and all these people would come bringing stories, and if you positioned yourself strategically, you could hear them all. So whether like who didn't pay their child's school fees because they spent the money on something else, or who flew where to buy what, or who was friends with whom, who had started a new business, who had borrowed money and not paid it back. Like, you knew all the stories, and I just felt like this book is so rich with stories that I feel were very familiar to me. I think that the whole thing of having 2 weddings is very African. You have your traditional wedding that's recognized by your community and your family, and it's historical to your ethnic group, but it's not legally recognized. The legally sanctioned marriage is the one that's been passed down by a colonial government, and that's your white wedding. And in this book, you have those 2 traditional marriages. So the protagonist, Afi, is married in a traditional wedding to the son of a wealthy family, and he's not there. I guess their tradition doesn't require him to be there, but the family there, they've sanctioned it, they've dowries have been exchanged, all this kind of thing. So she's married, and she is like a village girl. She comes from the village of Ho. She was raised by her mother in pretty impoverished circumstances, because her father died when she was fairly young. Nobody really wanted to take on the responsibility of looking after Afi and her mother, and it was down to the generosity of like the village's big woman. Big woman meaning she's pretty wealthy, she's got her finger in a lot of pies, she runs businesses, and she's got the kind of influence that can make or break a person in that community. And she takes them under her wing, and she looks after them for basically the next 10 years. And then when this woman says, well, her son has taken up with a Liberian woman and who's destroying his life, and she would like Afi to marry her son so that that you're more beautiful and more loving than this woman, and we believe that you can outshine her and win his affections and basically draw him away from her clutches, which is a very questionable plan. And her mother's all for it, and Afi's all for it as well, because she lives this pretty small life in this tiny village, and her prospects aren't great, and she wants to be a seamstress, she wants to start her own business, she's got hopes and dreams, she's ambitious, and she's like, well, what do I have to lose? So that's how Afi goes from the village of Ho to Accra, the capital of Ghana, and a very affluent lifestyle where she lives in this lovely flat, and she's got a car and a driver, and she's apprenticed to a very influential seamstress, and look towards starting her own business. And I guess the only sort of fly in the ointment is her husband, who is still with this woman but is kind of splitting his time between the 2. So the story is the plan that Afi has and her efforts to try to draw her husband away from this woman. It's very slice of life. It's not tragic and it's not comic, but it's got a lot of humor and a lot of warmth in it. And there's this great cast of women with Afi, her mother, the mother-in-law, her best friend, sister-in-law, all these women and all their different experiences of the world and their perspectives on what it means to be a woman. And it really spoke to me in terms of what it means to gain a husband and what marriage means. There's a point where Afi says, find the quote, well, it's Afi do this and he will choose you. Afi do that and you will win. Is he a husband or a prize? And there is very much this sense of, I remember growing up, my mum would say to me, you know, don't do that, your husband won't like it, or you must learn to do this, you must learn to cook this, and you know, how to clean this well or whatever to please your husband. And I wondered, you know, are boys around the world being told by their mothers that you should learn to do this so that your wife will be happy? Or is it just girls whose lives are being shaped around these, you know, hoped for mythical husbands? And so I really felt for Afi in terms of, you know, you've got to win this man away from this woman, and how are you supposed to do that? It's very interesting to see her efforts and the results of them. So I would really recommend this book. I think it's compelling, and I know I use the word compelling a lot, but what's the point of reading a book if it doesn't compel you to continue reading? And honestly, I read it so quickly, like it was so interesting. All these characters are so multi-layered. I thought it was very interesting in terms of the differences between traditional village life and when Afi moves to the city, and you know, the well-heeled, well-to-do people there and their goals and ambitions and how they see the world, and also how the hierarchy in the city is about money and proximity to Europeanness. So where did you study, and who are you married to, and how many European languages can you speak? And you know, well, your book sold well, you know, if you're a writer or an artist or whatever, but where did it sell well with the right people? And a lot of that is about how European are you, and you know, and looking down on, you know, villages and the, you know, more traditional ways. The author has got a very deft kind of light touch where nothing is too heavy, but she's able to say a lot of really interesting and powerful things. I think her writing is very sensual, like it's filled with sounds and scents and the flavors of food and the textures of materials, and so it's just very immersive, and you really feel like, you know, that you fall into this world. The author is a lecturer at the University of Bristol and a research fellow at the University of Ghana, and she lectures on gender and international politics, which makes perfect sense considering the themes in this book. And this is her debut fiction novel, and it's just so beautifully done. There's a review at the back that calls it a crazy rich Asians for West Africa, which I don't agree with, and sometimes I think that people just put words together because they sound cool. It's a slice of life, of African life, and it's very beautifully, richly done, and honestly I would recommend it for anybody. It's great for pandemic reading, for non-pandemic reading, read with your friends, book club, you know, recommend it to your mother, your sister. It's really fantastic, and I just hope that there's many more books coming from this author. So His Only Wife by Peace Adzo Medie.